Jamaica, a land of vibrant culture, deep history, and immense pride. Many who leave its shores, like Ethan, known as Yardman Ethan on social media, find themselves in new, unfamiliar worlds. But how does one navigate the cultural divide between the Caribbean and America?
Yo, big up on yourself every time. My name is Ethan Campbell Reed. You can also know me as Yardman Ethan. I am a social media content creator on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And they're about everywhere, you see me? Yardman Ethan everywhere. Big up Jamaica every time, big up 876. Thank you for having me, my African brother. I have relocated in Jamaica. I moved from Jamaica in 2014. And for those wondering, I have 2 passports. So I'm a dual citizen. So I am able to go to Jamaica when I feel like, and I'm able to come back to the States when I feel like. It's so there's that.
For Ethan, identity is deeply rooted in nationality. But as he soon discovered, things in America were very different.
Let me start off by saying that coming to the States, I had to learn that Jamaica is a country with a high level of nationalism. You know, Jamaica is a country where I recognize, and many parts in the Caribbean for that matter, where if you were to take us and put us into a foreign country, the first thing about our identity that we present to people is our nationality. I am a Jamaican, or I am a Trinidadian, I am a Vincentian, etc., etc. You know, so that was not the vibe I got when I came to America. Here in America, things are very different. I know that many people still are of the belief that America is a country that has no culture. I'm not going to say that. I used to think that way, but I'm not going to say that because, you know, it's so big, various. What happens in Florida is different from New York. What happens in New York is different in California. In California is different from North and South Dakota. What happens there is different in Texas, you know. So I'm not going to say that America has no culture, but when I came here, I recognized that America didn't have what I felt. I didn't feel a unifying culture. I didn't feel something that, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your political background, regardless of where you're from, something that can really hold people together through a nationalistic lens. That was something I didn't find. So what I recognized was that American culture is actually their politics. That was something that was very different. Everything in America is political. Everything in America is political. From the food you eat, from the skin color you have, from how you worship, from, you know, the school that you go to, where you live, the car that you drive. Why is climate change political? You know, like, why? It was something that in Jamaica, even though we do have political issues, and more so, especially around the time of election, the everyday life and things in Jamaica don't always come back to politics. You know, something like the topic of climate change, I believe both our political parties are able to look at and say, yeah, we live on an island. We need to worry about our environment. You know what I mean? Despite them having different political aspirations and, you know, agendas for where they want the country to go, point is, not everything in the country exists on a political spectrum. And that was something that I had to get used to here in America. That was something that I had to recognize, because it was not something that I could have stomached when I first came here. I'm like, why are people arguing about this? It doesn't make sense to me. And then I recognized, oh, it's about the votes, you know. Another thing that really stood out to me was, I admittedly, I had an expectation of what I thought American technology life to be like. I had a certain expectation, meaning I admit, and it was wrong of me, but I admit that I may have projected my values. Because when I was in Jamaica, I came from Jamaica with a BlackBerry Bold. My first iPhone wasn't until I came to America, you know. And upon having the iPhone in my hand, I'm like, yes. I felt like that was where I started creating content. You know what I mean? And like, I have my first iPhone, I have a camera I can shoot with, but at the same time, it's not just something I can call and text and shoot with, but I'm in a place where I actually have unlimited data in my hand. If I need to find things outside of Wi-Fi, I can. I can Google, and I recognized people in general just don't research. So it was one thing for me coming from Jamaica where, you know, you're at the mercy of having credit, or the amount of information at your fingertips outside of your home is up to it is really up to how much credit you may have, or depending on your data plan. Or let's be honest, the data plans in countries like Jamaica it can't fairly be compared to what the first world is having, you know? So it was a thing where I would hear certain questions being asked and I'm like, why don't you Google it? You know, like, or I hear certain things, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how do you not know this? Like, how do I know this and you don't know this? You know, like, or some people ask some questions, or some people are making some statements about how they feel, and they think that how they feel is actual fact. And I'm like, no, the law says. And I've had moments where I've had to educate. No, I'm not disrespecting any Americans, but just hear me out. I've had moments where I've had to educate Americans about their own laws because they may not have known. I'm like, you can just look it up right here. You know, so that was something that really put me back. I was like, do you not use your phone outside of texting and calling and social media? You know, it was one of those things where I'm somebody, I like to know things. I like to research things. If I don't know a word, if I'm reading, I'm a nerd. I like to read manga and anime and watch anime and them something. So even when I'm watching a show on Netflix, or I'm watching, you know, something for my own guilty pleasures, if I see someone use a word that I don't know, I'm pausing and I'm Googling what that word is so I understand the context of what's happening, you know? So even when I hung out with a lot of international students when I first came here, a lot of them were experiencing that same thing. Like, people were coming to them with certain microaggressions, or people coming to them asking certain questions, or doing or saying things to them where it's like, what do you mean? Like, you can't look this up, you know? So yeah, there was that.
While Ethan found many surprises, not all of them were positive. We asked about his most difficult experiences, including facing racism from people in positions of authority.
Worst experiences? Yeah, I could say a few. Worst experience. I had a racist professor once. It took me a while to actually remember that. Because the thing is, personally, I'm not gonna speak for anybody else, but personally for me, if you're trying to offend me, you can't. Don't try to offend me about my skin color, my race. Is me and say, if you want to throw the N-word at me, I promise you, it's not going to work. You understand that that doesn't work for me. If you want to offend me, say things about my mother, say things about my family, like disrespect me differently. You understand me? I say that's me personally. So everybody have their own different kinds of sensitivities. But this lady boy, she was definitely racist, because I recognize that. Admittedly, I did get to class late, like a few times, not a lot of times. It wasn't enough for her to start taking marks out of my grade or anything like that. But I recognize that one day I showed up early. Like, I showed up to class like 15 minutes early, and she was accusing me of being late. I'm like, lady, look at your watch. Like, excuse me? Like, that's when I recognized what was happening. I'm like, oh. You know, because she even because it was a relatively diverse group of group, even though everyone in there may not have been an international student. You know, you have people in there of international background. So even if it's first generation or second generation American exists in the classroom, I remember there's this one Asian girl in the class, and this lady looked at her and was like, is your family Vietnamese? Do they own a nail shop? I'm like, what? Who is this lady? Like, who is it? Like, what? At the end of the class, like, a group of the class members came together, and the fact that even the white kids were saying, this lady I forgot down, that's how you knew it was bad. Even the white kids were saying, yo, she's crazy. So that was one experience I did have. Outside of that, I would say that a lot of arguments that would happen, or misunderstandings rather, it happens a lot. I'm sure you can see it on Twitter whenever there's the African American versus Caribbean conversation always comes up. Sometimes it's blown out of proportion. Sometimes people are just trying to educate on what is and what is not. You know what I mean? So me, a black man in a Jamaica, as I said, even though Caribbean people, CARICOM people, I can speak for sure. Trinis, Jamaicans, Grenadians, Vincentians, even though what the first thing that we may identify with is our national identity, I started recognizing that here in the States, that may have been translated differently to many African Americans. And the reason why I say that is because I've been told already that I'm not black. And I'm like, what does that mean? But, at the same time, I understand that for African Americans to say black, they may be saying that they're foundational black Americans, meaning they are people from the days before America abolished slavery. Sure, but at the same time, understand that the slave trade was something that was not just Ghana to the Caribbean or Ivory Coast to America. You know what I mean? Like, it was a trade. People don't recognize that. It was fully a trade happening between the Americas and the Caribbean. So people were being even though they were taken from Africa to Jamaica, they may end up in Haiti, or they may end up in Louisiana, or they may end up in the South in America. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that people don't know. So I understand that when they say foundational black America is what they mean as black, they mean African American as black. Where does it really come to? Because I've even heard people say, oh, you, my friend, you're from Ghana. People in America may say that you're not black. But the thing is, as a Jamaican, as I said, me as a black man is not going to be the first thing out of my mouth. The first thing is going to be me as a Jamaican. I'm going to say, yeah, I'm a Jamaican. But even if you talk about racially, I can say, well, I'm an Afro-Jamaican. We do that, but it's not something that we do in everyday life. It's the term I use African American more so than Afro-Jamaican, because that's just how we're cultured. So so a lot of times I've heard many people with African background being told that they are not black simply because they're not American. So a lot of debates and conversations, and sometimes I've been told already to go back to my country, not by a white man. I'll tell you that. But it is what it is.
Despite the obstacles, Yardman Ethan continues to flourish. His journey connects two worlds with his voice grounded in Jamaica, resonating far beyond its borders. What's the most hilarious mistake you've made while navigating this new culture in America?
Got you. So, greetings and salutations is a cultural piece of thing, even though we speak in the same language, semantics is a hell of a thing, So in the Caribbean, it's very typical for us to greet people with the time of day. Hello, good morning. Hello, good evening. Hello, good night. In America, when you tell somebody, yo, good night, like greeting somebody with a good night, they're confused. They're like, because to them, when you tell somebody good night, that's basically saying goodbye, or I'm going to bed. You know what I mean? So I remember one time a friend of mine, a Jamaican friend of mine, he got pulled over by the police and said, hello, good night, officer. And nearly get in trouble. And he had to explain to the police, no. What I mean is, a Jamaica I come from, and we actually, yeah, bro. Yeah, it's a real thing. Hello, good night. Yeah, man, that has gotten people.